don't waste your time on a business plan. Don't waste a lot of time on a sales plan. Just get started. Don't overthink it. If you're ready to move on and do this, do it.
Hey there, business enthusiasts. Welcome to the Chills Podcast, brought to you by All Weather Roof. Because just like a sturdy roof, our conversations are built to last. I'm your host, Brent Loberg, and we're about to dive into the world of business, family, and the moments that give us those exhilarating chills. Ever wonder what keeps successful people inspired? Well, get ready to find out as we chat with some fantastic all-weather customers, partners, vendors, and friends. We'll explore their triumphs, challenges, and maybe even some unexpected secrets. After all, business is not just about numbers. It's about the people behind them. So grab your metaphorical popcorn and join us on this journey. Get ready to be inspired, maybe even get a few chills of your own. This is the Chills Podcast. Let the goosebumps begin.
Well, we're up and running. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Dave Neville, CSM Robotics. We're a robot integrator. We basically come in and look at operations, whether it's logistics, manufacturing, and we try and find ways to automate that. Everything from fixed build automation, so we'll make a specific machine, maybe to insert bearings into a car part. We do a lot for companies that make filters, and how do you do that webbing, which is a really tricky part of machine build. And then my specialty is a little bit more in that automation from adding robotics to that type of system. How do we load stuff into the system? How do we unload the system? Last year, we launched one of the very first no programming robot cells. And this is a cell that basically you put your gas tank in the cell. The robot creates a 3D image. The technician says, I want it polished to this level, or I want it ground or paint applied here. Mm-hmm. And the robot programs itself. So it takes about 15 minutes to set up a unique part versus it used to take us a day and a half to program those 3,000 waypoints on the robot to do what it should do.
Okay.
So just huge breakthroughs about every 6 months in robots. I love that. I used to own a company called Kuhn & Inc., making 357 Magnum automatics, AK-47 receivers, FAL receivers. And I was a DJ for about 10 years after high school and college.
Okay.
So I've done a few interesting things throughout my career. I've always tried to choose things I enjoy doing.
Sure.
Got a family, 2 kids, 6 grandkids.
All right.
A lifelong Minnesota resident.
I like it. So how did you get into the robotics side of things?
Well, I think I was 7 years old, like all of us, and thought that, geez, building a robot arm would be really cool. So my godmother had gotten me a erector set and built the best arm I could build with the, garage sale parts she had found me. I was super grateful for that. Got to high school, and we had actually, back in the mid-'80s, we had a robot lab.
Okay.
Teacher had a couple arms. Jim Winehouse from Burnsville High School was just very savvy at going out and getting grants. And he got us a grant for, if you know anything about robots, a Hero 2000. It was an AMR with an AGV with an arm on it.
Okay.
And kind of exited robots at that point for about 35 years and got back into it. And I realized, wow, they really haven't done much with this in 35 years. But I did catch it at the beginning of the wave about 7 years ago. And I had been working as a headhunter primarily for the defense industry, finding engineers and mathematicians for military platforms. So there's probably not a plane, ship that I didn't put somebody on, some scientist, some engineer to solve some problem for them. So I enjoyed that forever. I thought, hey, let's take this military tech and bolt it onto robots. So when I left the gun industry, decided, hey, robots was kind of cool. Actually, I was kind of thinking, geez, what's cooler than guns? And, pretty much nothing. But at the time, marijuana and robots had probably at least a far distant second. And I decided, if I'm going to get into hemp, why don't I just go into robots and make robots to grow hemp if I really want to be in that market?
Okay.
So I chose the robot market after I left the gun industry. Kind of looked at some of this military tech we've been working on. Really, the robot companies by that time were starting to catch up. This machine vision, AI vision stuff is just a game changer. And we're seeing massive breakthroughs in robots probably every 6 to 18 months versus it had been 30 years since I really saw a significant breakthrough in vision and robotics.
Okay. How did you know you had, or when did you realize you had a knack for it? Because I'm the guy that when I was a kid, when I was 7 years old, I would take apart my remote control car and try to get it back, and I could never get it back running.
I'm that guy. So I'm in sales. So basically I spent a lot of 10 years with UPS, a lot of process oriented. How do people do things? How do things move? A little bit of, then I opened up a gun factory. So had a lot of things to assimilate into. And what I kind of found is when you realize that the arm really is just doing this, it's just moving an object from point A to point B at its beginning, you realize the limitations and you realize the possibilities. And I'm kind of a person who has a bright imagination, and I can kind of make it up and imagine what it would look like. And then I go back and talk to the engineers, and they laugh and tell me how it really could be done. So I'm very good at getting my foot in the door, kind of seeing what their problem is and defining that problem. And then is it a fixed machine we need to build, or is there robots we throw at it?
Or are you more like the vision guy and then you have a team around you that's going to get it done?
Yes, I'm the visionary, and I've always had good, smart engineers around me that are very practical and kind of can appreciate the situation people are at.
Okay. Tell the audience a funny story about the robotics field throughout your career.
I guess, it was kind of funny. We just delivered the U.S. Marines logistics base of the future. Mm-hmm. And one of the funny thoughts, kind of funny, is they had wanted a machine that would take pallets, flip them upside down so you could put a plastic pallet on and take the wood one off, switch it from wood to plastic.
Okay. And why is that?
They wanted to use plastic in their operations, I'm assuming for mildew and rot. And,
okay.
Conformity. Well, seemed like a very expensive, bizarre machine. We had gotten them one. I said, you've got $60 million of automation in this facility, and you don't have one robot arm moving. It's a lot of AMRs, automated forklift trucks, an Adibotics SRS sort and retrieval system, basically a giant room you can't see everything moving in. All of a sudden a box pops out. It's what you want.
Okay.
So just a lot of very advanced automation, but nothing with a moving arm. And I said to him, when the generals walk in here, they're going to want to see something move. Why don't I replace this with a really slower robot arm that'll just repalletize it? And not only palletize it, but we could put it in Gaylords, big, huge boxes, take it out of big boxes, put it on a pallet. And they thought to themselves, yeah, that sounds good. And we've laughed because we get a call about every 3 months. Another general is through. They stood in front of that robot arm for 10 minutes. $59 million worth of stuff in this factory, and all they could stare at is the one arm moving one box to another spot. So I find that amusing as to, it's that marketing. How do you portray the system so they feel like they got a good value? Plenty of hijinks and, building a system and realizing, hey, we're halfway through it. It's not going to do what we have to do. And the guy's having to pivot and make some new fixturing, reprogram the robot. We just did a project for a client where they were going to do a lot of the wiring and fixed automation portion. And we show up to bolt the robot down and there's just nothing.
Okay.
So, it's been 3 days wiring and doing everything they were supposed to be doing the previous 3 months. So
got it.
I don't know so much humor, but some hijinks in it, if anything else.
Okay. So you're an entrepreneur. You went from DJ, guns, robots. Share a tidbit of advice for the audience of entrepreneurship.
Well, actually, argument with the current company. Don't waste your time on a business plan. Don't waste a lot of time on a sales plan. Put some things down. But I run a nonprofit called Minnesota Innovates, and we work with entrepreneurs to kind of, what do you need to know? Who do you need to know to get started? And our advice there is just to get started. Don't overthink it. If you're ready to move on and do this, do it. Have a plan. As we tell people, you don't really need a business plan until 2 years in, when the bank will actually give you a loan to help your operations grow. In the meantime, put an outline together, have a sales plan, have some marketing thoughts. And again, it kind of depends on your skills. But I work with entrepreneurs that literally for 4 years are still working on their business plan. I'm going, you'd be a 4-year-old company at this point if you would have started 4 years ago.
Yeah.
More often than not, what we find with entrepreneurs is a lot of people like to dream about being an entrepreneur, but they don't want to actually do it. Yeah, funny story on that. A friend of mine, his dad was got 200,000 miles on an Audi S8 and was giving it to his wife, and he's going to go out to California and pick it up and drive it back.
Okay.
So he calls me and he says, hey, you want to join me? And I'm thinking, hey, drive a supercar across the U.S. with my best friend for 6 days. Again, we were going to take a long route. No problem. On the way to the airport, I pick up a notepad and some pencils. And he's this guy who every month pitches about $1 million idea to me. And one of the best ones he had was a book on how to be a bully. Literally, how do you be a bully?
Okay.
And I'm thinking, what a great tongue-in-cheek, reader. I mean, that would sell. And he's looking at me with a notepad going, I just like thinking about the ideas. I'm never going to do one. And that was an epiphany for me for helping entrepreneurs.
Okay.
Are they here to just dream, or are they here really to implement their idea? And I think once you help them understand that, you help their journey. What do I mean by that? If you have people that are serious about it, hey, let's not spend 3 years on the business plan. Let's hammer out a general, consensus on what you're going to do, an outline, if you will.
Yep.
Let's look at what marketing assets and what your markets are going to be and put a small sales plan together and what do you need to do to execute that. And let's do it. But if I'm finding people who are just really more of that dreamer, let them dream. Because maybe in 3-4 years, they will be ready to make that move. Or more importantly, they might finally run into someone that helps them be that partner. And I think for most entrepreneurs, having a partner probably that complements you is what gets more businesses over the line than just somebody cranking out a business today.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
100%. I like that.
Yeah.
How was the drive across the U.S. in the Audi?
It was phenomenal.
To drive it?
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. Funny story there. We're about a day into the trip and my buddy's driving it because it's his car, right? Or his lease is going to be his wife's car. And I'm sitting in the passenger seat going, I'm weak stomached, but not this weak stomach. I mean, I'm just nauseous. We're driving up Highway 1 in California to Northern California. And I kind of noticed about every 3-4 miles, there was a car parked by the side of the road with the passenger getting out and throwing up. And I'm like, oh my God, it's the road making me sick. Because we're hitting this road pretty hard. So I finally said to him, I get it. I got the big fat gut. It's sloshing from side to side. I don't have the steering wheel to anchor it.
Sure.
So at that point, I got to drive for a while.
What year was this?
This was probably 7-8 years ago.
Okay. So it was a newer Audi S8.
It was a 2000 S8 with 200,000 miles on it. Funny story about that. He gives him the car and he goes, I think the transmission's going out. And I'm like, well, nice, Dad. I mean, we were to make it home. We pull out of his driveway and I said to my buddy, I'm like, make sure whatever you do to stop at the next red light. And he stops. I go, move the steering wheel to the right and the left. I go, it's not the transmission. You're low on power steering fluid. No, three garages looked and they said, it's just low. It's okay. I said, dude, we're driving a German car, not an American car. When Germans say low, they mean low. They don't mean you have another 10 months to kind of wait and put something in. So needless to say, 180 miles to the nearest Audi dealer, picked up a $90 bottle of power steering fluid, put in 3 tablespoons, and the car purred the whole way home.
Really?
It was 3 tablespoons low from being full. And that was the difference between it working or not. So that was a phenomenal trip I will never forget.
Sounds like a fun adventure.
Yeah, went across Utah at speeds I will not mention because I'm not sure if the, still legal to mention that yet. But
sure,
we had a blast.
Sure. So the name of the podcast is called The Chills. So those moments that make the hair stand up at the back of your neck, on your arm. How about something that gives you the chills within your business?
In my business, I have to be honest, it's probably a little more horror than chills. For us, it's, the market improving and people starting to invest again. That's been tough on our industry, as I think most industries. From a true chill standpoint, we spend a lot of time looking at safety. These robots move so fast, they'll take your arm off, they'll take a body part off with the blink of an eye.
Okay.
And walking into companies where you've put in this really advanced safety system to keep their people safe, and you see the chewing gum wrapper defeating the safety device. And you see a person literally duck into the cell and duck out. And that's terrifying. It's just like, there's no product, there's nothing in your production that's worth that kind of risk. So uncovering safety issues is literally the chills part, because we have to be very conducive to not what the average person is going to do, but we literally have to protect against that worker who literally is looking for that work comp paycheck for the rest of their life, and they'll use it because they'll get it. So trying to, I guess, regulate for the insane is a tough thing in our industry. And that's something that kind of keeps us up at night. Did we put enough safety in there? Is there enough layers? And if they defeat it, what else could we have done?
Okay.
So yeah, that gets a little scary, super scary when you see what people are actually doing when you're going, a robot could do it. That would be the other thing that sends chills up my spine is, why is a human near that? There's a $50,000 arm that could do that, you know? So that's kind of, I guess, some of the scarier things.
Sure.
Gun industry, there was a lot more close calls and chills because you're dealing with things that blow up and destroy things. So that was comparatively, I think that'd be the chilly part.
Okay. How about the chills in a good way?
Chills in the good way is, you walk in and you watch these people doing a job that you just know that, in 3 years, they're going to be wore out. They're going to have bad elbows, bad shoulders. And, going in and installing a system and see it just sing and seeing the look on everybody's face because nobody has to do that really dangerous, crappy job anymore. They're getting to be more in that quality control, feeding the system. They're getting to learn how to use the robot. Seeing people kind of grow through that automation and kind of seeing that, that spark in their eye where they can see this is the next step in their career.
Oh, no.
I just went from an operator to now I'm a robot operator. And I like that.
Okay. I can picture you creating a robot that's a DJ that also carries a gun for safety.
Yeah, I do keep an 80 millimeter artillery shell in my office to remember how big to build the fingers on the robot. So, we do laugh because, the number one question we all hate in robots is, when is the Terminator coming out? Sure. And, unfortunately, because I was very high into the defense industry and supplying engineers, I can tell you that ship has sailed. The only reason the U.S. keeps somebody on the finger is because we think that finger on the button is because we think that's the best way to do it, and it is. We have automated almost everything in that military, and there's nothing left that a small software upgrade, that plane could fly itself and engage the target and fire.
Okay.
So we're kind of been there for a while. When we're talking AI and robots, we are not talking the kind of AI you're seeing in ChatGPT. We're light years behind that. So I don't think we're going to see androids coming out drawing weapons anytime soon. But you will see small treaded tank-like stuff with a gun mounted, and you can now sense, and we're seeing that in the Ukraine play out. It's a little scary for the Ukraine because that's been my 8-year-old version of myself thinking, why are we going into war with all these people? Why don't we just have remote control planes and
Johnny number 5s? Just
exactly. Let that go in and destroy everything and send the humans in to find the humans that need help and clean up the mess. So it's a conundrum when we talk about automating warfare. Is it good that it saves some of us? Is it wrong hands? It's going to be bad for others. And there again, let's try and find a more peaceful planet. And I think that's by being strong as a nation.
Sure. How do I or the audience help you in your business?
So if you've got a warehouse or manufacturing facility, we specialize in logistics. So AMRs to move stuff around. If you have somebody moving a cart from one end of the warehouse to the other, we have carts that'll just follow them. When they're done, they can send it over to shipping and keep picking. So think wave picking, moving furniture to a customer's car. We have AMRs that can do that. From manufacturing, if you think of it in the history of robots, if it's high volume, low mix, they have 1 million parts to make, buying that robot's a no-brainer. Well, 80% of our U.S. manufacturing is high mix, low volume, meaning it might be less than 100 pieces, might be just 10. We have developed several robotic systems now that hit that high mix, low volume. So from machine tending to secondary operations like deburring, grinding, deflashing, polish, paint, welding, all things that robots are getting really good at.
Okay.
And so if you've got a process and you're just thinking, geez, I'm hurting those people, that's the best one. I'm wearing out their elbows, I'm wearing out shoulders. That's probably the easiest ROI. The other thing too is quality. Typically, once we dial in that robot, it's the same quality each time. And then with the vision we're using to do that, It also creates a digital twin, so kind of a copy of that process. And your QA, we can actually perform a lot of QA functions. For instance, if we have a robot manufacturing a medical device part, you have a complete history of what was done to that part. So if it fails in 30 years, you can go back and go, geez, there was a crack. We missed it. We owe you. Maybe you're not getting nailed with the, punishment. Or, hey, this is how it left our factory. It was perfect. What happened over the last 30 years, we're going to have to look into. So I think it would help a lot of companies, particularly in aircraft and medical. So I think that has a big improvement.
Any household names that you can share with the audience, companies that you've helped?
Well, we're super proud of the U.S. Marines, KPMG. We work with companies like 3M, Polaris.
Okay.
We work with a lot of big names, but a lot of the action is in medium-sized companies. I've got 10, 12 guys and trying to hire 15 and I can't find them. So we go in and we look, what could we automate so we could take your 12 people and keep them busy and employed?
Okay. Well, I apologize. I feel like I've rushed through the podcast, but you started sharing a story with us before we started that I'd really like you to touch on.
All right. So this is a holiday story. The key to the story is at your absolute worst moment in life, how will you be remembered? And this story involves Santa Claus, Patton, General George Patton, and my uncle Ben Griffin, a World War II fighting ace. So if you imagine, it's about 1943. Ben Griffin shows up in England. He's sick as a dog. And he's a pilot, P-51 pilot. And they want to get him in the air, but he's just too sick from the trip over. And it took him about 2 weeks to kick the bug he had. Finally gets into the air. And he's flying over Prague, about 30 miles east of Prague. And he finds a German airfield. And he realizes that as I dive down, I can blow up one of the planes, and then if I fly right over the gun barrels of the anti-aircraft guns, they can't quite hit me. You can look at the gauges. He knows there's the oil pressure's dropping, everything's dropping. This plane needs to go down. He knows he's way behind enemy lines. There's probably no marching this out and finding rescue. Well, as he comes into land, this little boy pops up in front of him in the field, been laying in the grass, the tall grass.
So he's still in the air.
He's still in the air. He's coming in. He's just about to touch down. He has no choice. Either the propeller hits this kid or he just nosedives the plane straight into the ground. Being the gentleman he is, nosedives the plane straight into the ground. Gun sight smacks him right in the forehead. He literally has an imprint of the gun sight in his head at this point, bleeding, a little disoriented because he just crashed. He didn't land. Gets out, the local people kind of come up to him and they give him some water, a little bit of tea, help him clean up his wound a little bit. And, he's just looking around going, there's no hope. And now he can see the bayonets coming across the field. So he waits, a couple minutes. They catch up to him, and probably about, 15, 20 feet from him, this troop of Germans all break out into a brawl. Full on, roll on the ground, fist fight. And he's just looking at him. The kids are looking at him, the villagers are looking, and they're just going, oh my God, what's going on? And finally, the lieutenant steps up, captain, I forget his title. I think it was the captain, pops up and goes, 9, mine. Looks at his guys, 9.
And he wouldn't know any German?
This is all he heard. He knew a little bit of German, knew this was no and mine, just because it sounded like it.
Yep.
And the captain looks at him and goes, 9, he points at his pistol. The ultimate war trophy is a pilot's pistol in Germany. So that's what they were fighting about, was a pistol. Well, they brushed themselves off and through a little bit of German and a little bit of Italian and a little bit of French and a little bit of English, the captain's able to talk to my uncle, and, we're obviously taking you at, and, my uncle's surrendered at this point. There's nowhere to go. And he's walking off and he looks at the kids and he thinks to himself, he kind of says, sir, I've got a couple chocolate bars and a couple things of chewing gum in my pocket. You guys are just going to divide this amongst yourselves, and what do you care? Do you mind if I just give it to the kids? So he breaks off a piece of chocolate, hands it to each of the kids, just amazed at the look on their face, leaves them each with a piece of chewing gum. They put it in their mouths and, just But God, they seem to really be enjoying that, and goes off to be tortured and murdered. So they take him to this interrogation center. They got the 2 German shepherds, growling at him while they're interrogating him. He's name, rank, and serial number. He's doing his part. They torture him a little bit. Basically, they would starve our guys to death. They would serve them sawdust bread made fully of sawdust.
Yeah, I heard that before. That's what they would.
It was literally, they would take sawdust and make bread out of it, and that's what they would feed the prisoners. I mean, might have been a little bit of wheat in there, but it was literally wood dust. They're on the train, and
The soldiers were starving as well?
Soldiers were starving. They had, and my uncle's all like, would you like some more? I'm like, nope, you Americans have big stomachs. You need that. We have little stomachs. We don't need food. That was these soldiers
Aren't totally human.
Yeah. Well, needless to say, the Americans bomb the train they're on. And the train derails and everybody gets off, and the SS comes up and just starts beating the crap out of these 3 soldiers. I mean, literally flogging them, punching them, bloodying them. And these kids are fighting tooth and nail. My uncle and the other 4 prisoners are looking at him going, okay, that's weird. They travel for days because, there's no real transportation trains out. Several times the SS intercept them and beat these kids up, trying to take take these soldiers out. They just want to take them out of the woods and execute them. And my uncle finally says to him, again, through some Italian, some French, they're all kind of able to communicate a little bit. But why would you defend us? Why don't just hand us over and go home? Well, sir, you don't understand. Our commander told us to deliver you to Stalag. And they're going, yeah, but these guys will just kill us. No, our orders are once we deliver you to Stalag, we go home to our mothers. We were told our mothers are starving and the war is over and it's over for us. So we're going to do anything we can to get you because our moms are starving. Oh, my God. Oh, okay. They're walking along. They're up on this ridge and they look down on this field and there's these 2 trucks and about 200 prisoners behind the trucks getting food. Like, let's go down there. We could get some food from them. And the soldiers are like, wrong Germans. We don't work with those Germans. Well, what do you mean wrong Germans? It's food. Guys, we're starving. We're about to collapse. No. They walk a little further. A fight breaks out in the line. 4 guards get out of the trucks, take their submachine guns and kill all 200 prisoners there. Kid looks back at my uncle and goes, wrong Germans? My uncle looks, yep, wrong Germans. Needless to say, they finally make it, deliver the kids, and those kids took off. Don't know what happened there. Again, my uncle hadn't been feeling good when he went into battle, was still kind of recovering, and of course being starved to death and tortured and going through all this. He's not sure how long he's there. But weeks, months into it, they hear some artillery. And they think, wow, that's U.S. artillery, and that's about 3.5 hours away. And they're like, a little bit of hope, right? Uh-huh. Well, not too long after that, they're watching the guards, and they all swan dived out of their guard towers, literally breaking their ankles and legs and crawling off into the woods. What a bizarre sight. I mean, he goes, this is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. Well, not more than a moment later, this U.S. Jeep bursts through the gates, and it's this white-haired guy with 2 pearl-handled pistol and a driver and a gunner. It's George Patton. My uncle looks at him, Patton looks at my uncle, and then the group of soldiers gather around. He goes, boys, France is that way. As soon as the Red Cross shows up, get your box, start marching, war's over for you. Patton bursts through the next gate, chasing the Germans through the woods. 3 hours later, the U.S. tank column rolled up, looks at my uncle and his buddies and goes, have you boys seen the general? General Patton's 3 hours liberating prison camps ahead of the tank column. Him and a gunner and a driver. You
Talking about the chills.
Oh, talk about the chills. I mean, literally sent a chill up this thing. Well, wonderful story of them going through the French countryside, meet a farmer, and they ask the farmer, can we sleep in your hayloft? He says, no, you sleep in our bed. Soldiers sleep in our bed. They go upstairs, and everybody takes, just taking their boots off to climb into the bed to get some sleep that night. And the lady just bursts out in tears. And my uncle and the guys he's with are like, did we offend you? What did we do? He goes, no. The Germans come, and when they come and take our bed, they leave their boots on when they go to bed. And my wife has to clean the feather bed every time they leave. And it's just a huge chore. They noticed it was starting to be a little bit colder out. Guy had just this ratty jacket. They kind of had, they knew they didn't have far to go. So one of the soldiers gave this farmer his jacket. And they left that couple just weeping that there was humanity coming back into the world. They reach France. They get to the airfield. They call their commander, and their commander says, sorry, boys, but you're there for the duration of the war. I can't put you back yet. And like, you got to be kidding. He says, nope, that's my orders. But whatever you do, at 5:30 a.m., do not be on runway 2A, at the end of runway 2A at 5:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. And at 5:25, the anti-aircraft guns opened up, and here comes their commander in a small civilian aircraft. Flies under the anti-aircraft, lands the plane, doesn't stop. They all have to run, jump into the plane, get in, flew back to England, and they were all back in the fight. Now, war is over. My uncle becomes a jet. Ben Griffin, this jet pilot, test pilot.
Ben Griffin's his name?
Ben Griffin's my uncle's name. Becomes a test pilot, ends up being an insurance salesman and a pilot instructor. Okay, for the rest of his life. He's probably in his late 70s, and some German guy shows up at his front door with 20 news crews. And he's like, what's going on? He goes, well, I was that young boy who stood up in front of your plane, and my whole life I've wanted to know, why didn't that American kill me? He had every right to kill me and keep one more soldier from hitting the field someday. And of course, in just the stoic, humble of Ben Griffin, he says, you were a boy. I was there to fight soldiers. You needed to live.
Gosh.
Just amazing.
Unbelievable.
Did a write-up on the story on his whole thing, and it was just beautiful in the papers.
Well,
not too long after that, my uncle died. And, he was just an old guy. He lived a great life. This story could go on. I mean, they actually went to the Olympic Stadium and took down the swastika flag from the Olympic Stadium, and they passed that around for years until my aunt shows up one day and somebody has red silk curtains. I saved the swastika. I needed the silk for curtains. Do you imagine silk curtains? Just the stories that and the ancillary stories in there are just amazing. It could be a whole nother podcast, but
sure, we'll have to have you back on.
Yeah. Well, after he died, his son, my cousin, runs the Boston Theater Group for Boston College, and they work with Prague. Every 3 years, they do a co-production. One's in the U.S., the next one's in Prague. Well, he's in Prague, and he thinks to himself, God, I'm 30 miles away from where Dad crashed. I got to go see this little village. So he goes and visits the village, and they're able to communicate enough. And the professor's writing a book on your dad. And he goes, what? And then you hook him up with the professor, and all the townspeople are gathered around. And what they explained to my cousin was, and this is back to, how are people going to remember you? How are people going to remember you at the absolute worst moment of your life? So at the moment of my Ben Griffin's, my uncle's life, at his worst moment, he is now known in that area. They basically said, we do not share the story of St. Nick in our region anymore. At Christmas time, we tell the story of the American who fell from the skies, saved our children, and introduced us to chewing gum and chocolate. We had been at war for so long, our children had never experienced chocolate, and chewing gum was a recent invention that just hadn't made it to the region yet. It's been around for 30, 40 years, I'm guessing. And so, what I'd leave you today is, at your worst moment, when you've got the chills,
sure,
you're going to die, you're going to be tortured, it's going to be horrible. How will people remember you? Me, it'll be a cussing mess. My uncle, they remember him as St. Nick.
Wow.
So as you go out through your day,
I literally have the chills. Holy crap.
How are you going to be remembered? Can you keep your cool that long to remember the children and impact them in a way that it wasn't just the children, it was the whole community. It was like, saved the one kid. Could have crashed into our village and killed us all on purpose, just as, what was going through their minds? What were the chills they were experiencing? And every time I think of this, I literally have the chills right now, although it might be a little cool in here. So,
even though you've told the story thousands of times, it still gets you. 100%.
Well, and I will say, when I heard the story, I was 28 years old. I'd heard my uncle's hunting stories in the past. I'd never heard his war story. I was down at a lighting convention in Florida, and I'm with a Vietnam vet aircraft mechanic. And I called my aunt up, said, can we come hear Uncle Ben's story? And she made the most phenomenal Southern dinner you could. I is by far one of the top 10 dinners I've ever had in my life. Flavor was incredible. And we sat there for a 4-hour version of this, 4-hour motion picture epic, because we were all history nuts. We knew every piece of hardware he was talking about. We could see the angle of the plane. It was incredible.
So he told you the story firsthand?
Firsthand, 4 hours long. Well, it's getting late. He's old. My aunt's, you guys have wore him out. Time for you to leave. Walks me to the door and she goes, I've heard this story for 50 years, David. 50 years he's been telling that story. They've never heard it with so much passion, detail, and love. That was incredible tonight. I did go back a few years later and I've taped the story. Not nearly as passionate. He had a couple open heart surgeries at that point, but I do have the gist of it down on video at this point. So I do think Tom Hanks, if you're out there, this would be a great war Christmas movie to make.
I love it. Unbelievable story. How do you guys celebrate him at all?
Yeah, I try and tell the kids the story every Christmas if they'll listen.
Sure.
I've got 0, 2, 3, 5, and 8 years old, so they're just getting to the point where they can sit and listen and grasp it.
God, I'm talking about a motion picture.
Oh, really, Patton, World War II fighting ace, and Santa Claus. It's got to be some kind of...
Sure.
There's got to be something out there.
Did you ever get a hold of the book?
No.
No?
I have not. I haven't seen it because this was just about 5 years ago we found this out.
Okay, so that'd be a great book to get a hold of.
Yes, I'd like to do that.
Huh. And that was it. Did you say 1943?
I think it was 43 when he started. So it was just about the end of the war.
And Ben Griffin?
Ben Griffin.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So that's probably the chills part of my podcast.
Yeah. I always do like story time with the kids, and I could picture myself going back and tell, but I'd rather wait and show them the podcast because I couldn't tell it the way you did and with the detail. And
well, and to be honest, I don't know how long that was, but that was an insane, I got the 4-hour version, and it was just, again, just how they all communicated, even during times of war, even with your enemies. I mean, they had to take care of these kids so that they could survive to be sent to a prison camp. Think about the decisions you have to make in life.
Oh, for sure.
I mean,
I like the humanization piece of there were still, war was going on. There was still the human element there that saved some lives and
still had to eat, still cared about your moms. We really do want to rethink warfare as often as we can because it is devastating, but to see that humanity and all that pain and destruction. I mean, these kids were starving and they've been starving for a decade.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize we entered the war 12 years basically after it started. I mean, this started in the 30s with the rise of Hitler and, this war economy he was after. So,
yeah,
we were latecomers to the game. These guys had been living it for literally a decade or more.
Wow.
And the decade before that, they were in World War I. So it wasn't like there was this huge break in Germany from a wartime, like 10 years. They basically had just less than 10 years before they started war again.
Yeah. Yeah. And you think kind of relating it to business a little bit, everybody was there to get a job done. But we talk about culture within the workplace and you just think there's that human element that just makes it special. And that's the stories you remember. And
it does. Yeah. And I tell you, it's one thing I will say because everybody, your robots are taking jobs. And so far we haven't taken a job that we think we've removed a person from a job. We've just moved them to a new job. One exception, a person wanted O-rings put onto an oil plug and easy enough for us to do. And I said, well, how do you do it now? And he says, we bring in a group of handicapped people to do it. And I told him, I said, don't ever call me again. Just call up John Deere. Tell them it's going to be a nickel extra per plug. Tell them why.
Yeah.
And then tell them to go save their nickel somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think when you're dealing with those handicapped people, it's not an economic thing. It's a social thing. It's huge for our society. It's huge to those people and their quality of life. There's decisions to be made from that accounting thing.
Yeah.
We've actually found them a tool that they can use. So they can use the handicapped people to do it faster.
Okay.
So hopefully they can pick up their nickel and still keep those people employed.
It's another chills moment. I love it.
Oh, it's balance. You know, I don't care. We just had the election. You may have leaned one way or another way. I can tell everybody, I think everybody in America knows this. We are not good on the right. We are not good on the left.
No.
America's always been great at moderation.
Yeah.
Come together, make some sacrifices. We've always been really good when we're in the middle together. Let the 10% here flail, let the 10% here flail, but let's the 80% of us just come together and let's heal this country and let's move it forward because we are truly the greatest nation on the planet.
Damn, I love it. It's a good way to put it. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
Unbelievable.
Appreciate having me.
And that's a wrap, folks. A huge thank you to our incredible guests and, of course, All Weather Roof for making this podcast possible. If you enjoyed these conversations as much as we did, don't forget to hit subscribe and share the chills with your fellow business aficionados. Remember, it's not just about business, it's personal, and it's all about the people. Stay inspired, chase those dreams, and let the chills guide you. Till next time, this is Brent, signing off from the Chills Podcast. Catch you on the flip side.